The Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Diego Castro, bringing you the biggest headlines from around the world. Israeli troops claim to have found a command center as well as weapons and combat gear belonging to Hamas militants in Gaza's biggest hospital. Al-Shifa Hospital had become the chief target of the Gaza incursion by Israeli forces, who said the quote, beating heart of the Hamas operations was headquartered in tunnels beneath it. Israeli military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said the troops were still searching after being able to enter the hospital early on Wednesday. They also released a video showing some of the materials it recovered from an undisclosed building in the hospital compound, including automatic weapons, grenades, and ammunition. Hamas and local officials have since denied that the hospital was used in this way and dismissed the Israeli statements as lies and cheap propaganda.
In the hospital, we've found weapons, intelligence, military technology, and military equipment. Additionally, an operational command center and technological assets belong to Hamas. Our forces continue to operate inside the hospital in a targeted fashion based on our intelligence to uncover and eliminate terrorist activity in the hospital.
The United Nations Security Council calls for urgent and extended humanitarian pauses in fighting between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The 15-member council successfully resolved a deadlock which had seen 4 unsuccessful attempts to take action in the previous month. They adopted a resolution that also urges the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages held by Hamas. The United States, Russia, and Britain, who are Council of Veto powers, abstained from the vote on the resolution drafted by Malta. The remaining 12 members voted in favor. The resolution provides a sufficient number of days to allow humanitarian aid access in the war-torn area. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now World. I'm Diego Castro. British members of parliament voted against a motion calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators rallied outside the Palace of Westminster as the vote was ongoing. Protesters called on the parliament to represent them in calling for a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. However, 293 members of parliament voted against the motion, outnumbering the 125 members who were in favor. Prior to the voting session, the Labour Party brought up its own motion, which was denied by a majority of the chamber. The amendment called for, quote, humanitarian pauses, saying that an actual ceasefire would trample on Israel's right to self-defense. U.S. President Joe Biden met with Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first time in a year, with hopes of easing friction between the two superpowers. Biden said the U.S. and China had to ensure that competition between them does not, quote, veer into conflict. The U.S. leader also emphasized the need to manage the relationship responsibly. For his part, Xi called the ties between China and the U.S., quote, the most important bilateral relationship in the world. The Chinese president acknowledged their responsibility to make it work for their people and the rest of the world.
I value our conversation because I think it's paramount that you and I understand each other clearly, leader to leader, with no misconceptions or miscommunication. We also have a responsibility to our people and the work in the world to work together when we see it in our interest to do so. And the critical global challenges we face, from climate change to counter-narcotics to artificial intelligence, demand our joint efforts.
China-U.S. relationship has never been smooth sailing over the past 50 years or more, and it always faces problems of one kind or another. Yet it has kept moving forward amid twists and turns. For two large countries like China and the United States, turning their back on each other is not an option.
Protesters took to the streets of San Francisco and tried to block some entrances to the APEC conference. Roughly 150 people gathered at an intersection outside the security zone at the city's convention center on Wednesday. The group aimed to stop conference attendees from passing through, forming a human chain that diverted some commuters and delegates. One organizer said leaders and businessmen can't sit at the table unless the people are able to express their demands. The Vatican confirms a ban on Catholics becoming Freemasons. The Vatican's doctrinal office said in a letter dated November 13 and countersigned by Pope Francis that active membership in Freemasonry by a member of the faithful is prohibited because of its irreconcilability with the Catholic doctrine. This comes in response to a bishop from the Philippines alarmed by the growing number of Freemasons in the country. Masonic lodges are normally male-only societies associated with arcane symbols and rituals and linked to several conspiracy theories. And those are the top world headlines of the hour. Join us again at 9:45 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. I'm Diego Castro. We are One News. All sides, all the time.